Tonight, we bring you an inside look at what unfolded this morning along Route 100 in Waitsfield. The streets were packed, hundreds of protesters standing shoulder to shoulder, their signs held high, their voices loud and unwavering. Flags waved in the air, some showing anger over the Trump administration's policies, others standing in strong support of Ukraine. The energy was undeniable. Both sides of the road were filled with passionate individuals, all gathered with a clear purpose: to make their frustrations known as Vice President J.D. Vance and his family vacationed right here in Vermont. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lucy Kale. Across 3 separate locations, Warren, Waitsfield, and the base of Sugarbush Resort, protests erupted, each one carrying its own weight and intensity. Our reporter, Haley Morgan, was on the ground, speaking to those determined to make their voices heard. The scene was striking, crowds stretching far along the streets, a sea of people standing in protest as J.D. Vance enjoyed his family getaway in Vermont. One protester didn't hold back, stating, "J.D. Vance doesn't have friends here in Vermont. But in Russia? Oh, he's got plenty. Maybe that's where he should vacation instead." Others echoed similar sentiments, standing firm in their belief that resistance is the only way to fight back against what they call rising fascism. "The key is unity," one person said passionately. "They want to divide us, but we won't let them." J.D. Vance had planned a weekend of skiing at Sugarbush Resort with his wife and 2 children, but outside the resort, the opposition was impossible to ignore. Grassroots organizations and determined protesters lined the streets of Waitsfield, stretching nearly a mile, turning the area into a battleground of voices. Organizers estimate the turnout exceeded 1,000 anti-Trump administration protesters, vastly outnumbering the dozens who showed up in support. Among those protesting was a federal employee who stepped forward, his frustration evident. "I watched as 11 of my fellow public servants were unlawfully fired," he exclaimed. "All of it happened because of the complacency of those in power." Meanwhile, in Warren, tensions were high as protesters and supporters found themselves in a heated exchange. Voices clashed, messages were shouted from both sides, neither group backing down. One Trump supporter, standing firm, explained, "We're here to welcome J.D. Vance with open arms. We wanted to give him a positive rally, a show of support, not just for him, but for what he and President Trump are doing for this country." At the mountain, the presence of the Secret Service was hard to miss. Vehicles and personnel were stationed throughout Sugarbush Resort, keeping a close watch on the situation. Despite the protests, some skiers were simply excited by the idea of sharing the slopes with the vice president. "It's pretty cool. I mean, how often do you get to ski at the same mountain as the VP?" One skier said enthusiastically. "I even heard his kids are in ski school. That's wild." Others took a more neutral stance, emphasizing that while J.D. Vance had every right to vacation wherever he pleased, the protesters had an equal right to express their views. If he wants to ski in Vermont, sure, go for it. But people also have the First Amendment right to assemble and speak their minds. That's democracy in action.